Hello and welcome to my brilliant students. I hope that you're having a good day. Today, we're going to be learning about subject and theme within short stories. Subject and theme within short stories are two very closely interconnected ideas, but they are not the same ideas. And so I wanted to go ahead and go into this for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons being that oftentimes there is a mistake that my students make whenever I ask them what the subject of a story is. Oftentimes, whenever I say, hey, what was the subject of the Columber? They will basically give me a plot summary and they'll give me a synopsis. That's what a summary is. They'll give me a summary or a synopsis of what the Columber was about. And it basically just say, hey, here are the main ideas. A kid is trying to avoid a fish he heard about from his dad whenever he was younger. Turns out that the fish was not evil and trying to eat him. It was trying to bring him prosperity. And that's what happened. That's not what a theme is. Okay, that's not what a subject is. The subjects and the themes are going to be a lot more complex, and it takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of detective work specifically to find the theme. Subjects are easy to find. Themes are a little bit more difficult. So I wanted to go ahead and give you a good idea of what these two separate components are and how they're interwoven together. The subject refers to the topic of the story. In the past, I've referred to the subject as the big ideas of the story. Perhaps you've heard that whenever you were in middle school or whenever you were a freshman, that big ideas can also be called the subject. And so authors use characters, dialogue, setting, and other elements of fiction to build an abstract main idea in their stories. And that idea, that's what's called the theme. One story can have multiple things that are connected or unrelated. We talked about that whenever we were talking about Finding Nemo, how you have the independence of Nemo, but at the same time you have Marlin trying to trust again and how those butt heads against one another. And then you have this other subtle theme of mental illness and community as you're watching the story of these fish unfold. So these themes often revolve around a similar or the same subject, and it will oftentimes give different perspectives or ways of thinking about that subject. So subject and theme are different. In a story about two men lost at sea, the subject is a little bit more obvious. The subject is going to be easier to identify. The subject for Two Men Lost at Sea would be their experience on the rough seas with very little food or water, for example. That's kind of what you were doing whenever you were talking about the Columber, and if you were giving me a summary, you were actually touching on the subject of Stefano avoiding something that was actually going to bring him prosperity for the rest of his life. A story about two men lost at sea could include themes related to isolation, helplessness against nature, the indomitable human spirit, pulling together in times of danger, the fragility of humans, and so on and so forth. That just depending on how the author chooses to handle the subject. So if you had the Columber, the subject would be avoiding something that was actually very good for you, but the theme would be wasting your life doing so, wasting your life living in fear rather than taking a risk or rather than confronting your destiny, right? So that's what the theme would actually be in the Columber. A theme is a central idea or a universal truth. And so broadly, themes explore life, human nature, or how the world works. That's not an exhaustive list, but that is mostly what a theme is going to explore. So the author doesn't just tell this to you. All right. The reader has to figure it out. So I wanted to go ahead and just tell you what a few common themes are. There's a million different possible themes. Imagine as many lessons as there are to learn. That's how many themes there are. So some of the examples are man's worst enemy is man. Good is greater than evil. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Life is beautiful but short. Treat others as you would have them treat you. And love conquers all. Okay? We could probably go through and we could probably list out a movie or a TV show or a story or a book or a poem or something for each one of those, because those are all very common themes, right? So here are some tips for identifying theme for you. First of all, look at the title. What is the title trying to tell you? What is the title saying? And anytime that the title comes up in the literature, pay attention to that. because that's going to be important. The author did not do that accidentally. The other thing that you should be looking for is repeated ideas or images. Be looking for symbols. Be looking for motifs. So another thing that I would say is look for repeated ideas or images. Those are called motifs. And as you see these things kind of crop up over and over and over again, that is the author using symbolism and motifs to tell you something and say, hey, I'm trying to direct your attention here. This is going to be important, right? What do the characters learn? So characters very oftentimes, one of the reasons why we go to story, one of the reasons why it connects with us is because we connect with the characters, right? And so oftentimes the characters become this avatar for us, just like we have avatars in video games, or we have characters in video games that represent us. In a video game, the characters actually move about and learn things, and we watch and we read this story as the characters go through it, and as they learn, we're learning similar or the same things, or we're learning what not to do in some cases, right? Another thing that I would say is do your best to try to make the connections between the story in real life. Is the author making a comment about something that is in the world? Is the author making a comment about relationships? Is he making a comment about society? Is he making a comment about justice or goodness? Is he making a comment about it can be any number of different things, and all of the different nuances and permutations within that. Okay? The subject is often explicit in the plot or the characters. So if there's two men at sea who are battling against nature, you know that there's two men at sea battling against nature. If there's a boy who's trying to avoid this mythical fish, you know that there's a boy avoiding a mythical fish. But a theme is going to be more subtle. So how do authors construct a theme? I mentioned motif. And so motif, tone, and mood are literary elements that authors use to influence the theme in a story, and I wanted to hit on motif first because a motif is an element such as an object, an event, an image, or a device. It can be even a setting that the author repeats in a significant way, or the author keeps on revisiting that same thing. And like I said before, that is the author taking this idea or taking this element, this object, this event, whatever it might be, and just trying to direct your attention and saying, hey, I'm highlighting this for you. I'm trying to show you that this is significant in some way. The tone of a story refers to the author's attitude towards the subject, which can be stated directly or indirectly. So tones are as varied as the way that we speak to one another. Okay? Like, whenever your mother says, hey, don't you use that tone with me? Like, that's a very specific tone that she's talking about. Right? And so a tone can be serious, it can be hopeful, it can be satirical, or any other emotion or attitude that the other author may want to express. There are also major and minor themes. So authors often construct and intertwine major and minor themes in a story. Major themes are the most important overarching ideas of the story and often recur throughout a work. On the other hand, minor themes may appear from time to time, but not so frequently or significantly enough to drive the story. So you have the major themes that are going to be cropping up all of the time, and even the minor themes are often looked at through that lens or through that filter. Okay, like you can almost think of a major theme, like once you identify the major theme or what the author is trying to tell you or teach you, you can look through the entire book through that lens, almost like you're putting a Snapchat filter, except you're doing it for a book. And as you put that Snapchat filter on the book, you can interpret the rest of that story through that one major theme, and then minor themes are going to come up, and you're going to see those minor themes through that lens. Although it's often easy to spot the subject and theme, they sometimes do overlap. And so a useful way that I could describe this to you, the relationship between the two, is that a theme is always going to be a statement on the subject. Okay, so you could have a subject like war, and the theme could be as varied as just war is necessary, or war is evil, or war diminishes the humanity of the participants, and so on and so forth. And those are all themes that cover the same subject, right? But they're all teaching you different things, or they're all trying to highlight a different aspect. So sometimes the theme in a story are obvious and direct. At other times, author may imply themes through indirect methods, including the words and actions of their characters. The ones that I think of, I think of cautionary tales whenever I think of authors using their characters to try to teach us something. For example, I have here The Great Gatsby. The irony of Gatsby is that he was not a great man. He was actually a very kind of a pathetic man that dedicated his life to something that he never could have, and he was obsessed with the things that he could not have. And in the same way, you have over here, I have an image of Captain Ahab, who was always going after the great white whale, which was another symbol of this obsession of this thing that was always out of his reach, and how that eventually destroyed him. And so you have kind of a similar theme between these two men who are telling this cautionary tale of be careful about what you dedicate your time to. Be careful that you do not become obsessed with the very thing that's going to destroy you. So now it is time for you to practice. Go ahead and grab your copy of the Columber and review it if you need to, and use the worksheet assignment to identify some motifs, the mood, and the tone. Bring it all together by writing what you think the subject is, and in addition, the themes. So you're going to get a worksheet or a Google slide that is going to be similar to this. I have here just a few reminders that I want you to use complete sentences. Don't just give me sentence fragments. I will return it to you and ask you to give me complete sentences. And it asks, what are the motifs? What are the images and symbols and settings that keep on appearing? What is the mood of the story? What is the tone of the story? Can you kind of identify that? And if you have any difficulty on that, don't worry, because our next lesson is actually going to go into tone in depth. All right. So using the above information, what are some of the subjects you can identify in the story? And finally, what is the theme of the story? What is the author trying to say about the subjects that you found? And so I want you to focus on the Columber, and I want you to review that story and tell me what were the subjects and what were the themes. What was it that the author was trying to teach you? Okay, these are the author's comments on that particular subject. So, with all of that said, I hope that you have a wonderful day, and don't stop learning, my brilliant students.